The day the sky changed. Sarila stood on the raised platform in the great assembly hall of Lithra's Central Academy. Her silver robes caught the morning light that streamed through the crystal dome above. She was 16 years old, tall and graceful like all her people, with pale blue skin that shimmered softly when she felt nervous. Right now she felt very nervous. 200 students sat before her in curved rows. Their large amber eyes watched her with patient attention. Behind her, 3 teachers waited with encouraging smiles. This was Cultural Exchange Day, the most important event of the academic year. Each student had to speak about something they had learned from another civilization in the galaxy. Sarila had chosen to talk about art and music from the peaceful worlds of the Outer Rim. She took a breath and began. Her voice was steady despite her nervousness. She spoke about the singing crystals of Melody Prime, about the living paintings of Artesia, about the dance rituals of the flowing people. Her 6 fingers moved gracefully as she illustrated her points, a habit all Lithrans shared when they spoke with passion. The audience listened quietly. Some nodded in approval. Her best friend Taryn gave her a small smile from the 3rd row. Sarila felt her confidence growing. She had practiced this speech for weeks. She knew every word by heart. She was almost finished when the sirens began. The sound was unlike anything Sarila had ever heard. It was sharp and piercing, rising and falling in waves that made her teeth ache. Emergency lights flashed red along the walls of the assembly hall. Students jumped to their feet in confusion. Teachers rushed toward the communication panels. Sarila stood frozen on the platform, her prepared words forgotten. The sirens meant only one thing: invasion. But that was impossible. Lithra had not been invaded in 3,000 years. They were protected by treaties. They were members of the Galactic Union. They had friends across 100 star systems. No one would dare attack them. The head teacher, Elder Vethiz, activated the main screen. His face was pale with shock. Above the audience, a massive holographic display appeared. It showed the space above their planet. Sarila's breath stopped in her chest. The sky was filled with ships. Not friendly ships. Not peaceful ships. Warships. Thousands of them. They hung in orbit like a swarm of metal insects, blocking out the stars. Their hulls were dark red and black, covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. Sarila recognized them from her history studies. These were Zarkith vessels. The Zarkith Collective was known throughout the galaxy as a conqueror species. They had destroyed 40 civilizations in the last century alone. They showed no mercy. They took no prisoners. They believed that only the strong deserved to exist. A voice boomed through every speaker in the academy. It came from the command ship above. The voice was harsh and grating, translated by the Universal Communication System into Lithran language. People of Lithra, it said. Your world now belongs to the Zarkith Collective. You have 12 hours to surrender completely. Dismantle all defensive systems. Gather your population in designated areas. Prepare for harvesting. If you resist, every living thing on your planet will be eliminated. If you comply, some of you may be permitted to serve. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Silence filled the assembly hall. Then chaos erupted. Students screamed. Some ran for the exits. Others stood paralyzed with fear. Teachers tried to maintain order, but their voices were lost in the panic. Sarila remained on the platform, staring at the screen. 1,500 warships. Maybe more. Her people had no military. They had never needed one. The Lithrans were scientists, artists, philosophers. They solved problems through discussion and cooperation. They had not fought a war since their ancestors first reached for the stars. How could they fight now? How could they possibly survive? Elder Vethiz managed to restore some calm. He ordered all students to return to their homes immediately. Families needed to be together. The council would meet and decide what to do. There was still hope, he said, though his voice shook. They would contact their allies. The Galactic Union would help them. The ancient protector races would intervene. Everything would be fine. But Sarila could see the lie in his amber eyes. He did not believe his own words. None of the teachers did. Sarila ran through the streets of her city. All around her, Lithrans were flooding from buildings. Everyone had heard the announcement. Everyone had seen the ships. The beautiful parks and gardens that lined every street seemed meaningless now. What did flowers matter when death hung in the sky? She reached her home in the residential district. Her family was gathered in the main room. Her father stood by the communication console. Her mother held Sarila's younger brother close. Both their faces showed the same expression. Terror. The council is sending messages to everyone we know, her father said. His voice was hollow. The Galactic Union. The Elder Confederacy. The trading guilds. All our friends. All our allies. Someone will help us. Someone has to help us. Hours passed. Responses came back one by one. Each one was worse than the last. The Galactic Union expressed deep concern but could not commit military forces at this time. The Elder Confederacy regretted that they were bound by non-interference protocols. The trading guilds declared themselves neutral in all military conflicts. Even species that Lythra had helped in the past sent polite apologies and empty promises. No one was coming. No one cared enough to risk war with the Zarkith. Sarila sat by the window and watched the sky. The Zarkith ships were visible even in daylight now, dark shapes that moved slowly across the clouds. She thought about her interrupted speech. She had been talking about art and music and beauty. Those things seemed so small now. So fragile. The galaxy she had learned about in school was a lie. It was not a place of cooperation and shared culture. It was a place where the strong devoured the weak and everyone else looked away. Night fell. The 12-hour deadline was half over. Surila's family ate dinner in silence. No one was hungry, but they went through the motions anyway. What else could they do? After the meal, her father told them he loved them. Her mother did the same. They all understood what these words meant. They were saying goodbye. Sarila excused herself and walked back toward the academy. The streets were empty now. Everyone was hiding in their homes, waiting for the end. She did not know why she was going back. Maybe she wanted to see the place where her normal life had ended. Maybe she just did not want to wait at home for death to arrive. The assembly hall was dark when she entered. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the empty seats. The holographic display was still active, still showing the Zarkith fleet above. Sarila climbed onto the platform where she had stood that morning. It felt like years ago. She looked at the display and made a decision. If these were her last hours, she would not spend them hiding. She would finish what she started. She would complete her speech. Not for an audience. Just for herself. Just to prove that beauty and art and hope had existed once, even if only briefly. She activated the recording system. She began to speak. She talked about the singing crystals and the living paintings and the dancing rituals. Her voice echoed in the empty hall. Tears ran down her face, but she kept speaking. She spoke about everything she had learned, everything she loved about the galaxy. She spoke until her voice grew hoarse. And then the alarms went off again. Sarila stopped mid-sentence. New lights flashed on the holographic display. Something had just entered the system. Another ship. A single ship. It was small compared to the Zarkith warships. Its hull was scarred and patched, marked by countless battles. But it was moving fast, and it was moving toward Lythra. Sarila stared at the display in confusion. What was one ship going to do against 1,500? Was this some new Zarkith trick? Some cruel game? Then the identification signal came through. The ship's origin registered on the screen. Sarila's heart skipped. It was a human vessel. She had learned about humans in her classes. They were a young species from a small world at the edge of the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. They were not members of the Galactic Union. They had no great power or influence. Most civilizations barely noticed they existed. Why would a human ship come here? Why would they fly into certain death? A message broadcast across all frequencies. The voice was female, speaking in clear galactic standard. This is the Terran vessel Defiant Dawn. We received your distress call. We are here to defend Lythra. Zarkith Collective Forces, you have one opportunity to withdraw. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences. Sarila could not believe what she was hearing. One ship. One human ship against the entire Zarkith armada. It was suicide. It was madness. But it was also the first time anyone had offered to fight for her people. The Zarkith warlord's response came quickly. His laughter was cruel and mocking. Humans, he said. I thought your species was already extinct. I thought we finished you off decades ago during our expansion. This is perfect. We will destroy you first. Then we will destroy this pathetic world. 2 extinctions in one day. What a glorious achievement. The human captain did not respond with words. Instead, the Defiant Dawn accelerated directly toward the Zarkith fleet. Weapons powered up along its hull. The small battered ship charged alone into the darkness where 1,500 warships waited. Sarila watched from the empty assembly hall. She had come here to finish her speech about beauty and art. Instead, she was watching someone choose to die for strangers. She did not understand humans. She did not understand why they would do this. But as the first weapon's fire lit up the display, she felt something she had not felt since the sirens began. She felt hope. It was fragile and probably foolish. The humans would be destroyed in minutes. But for those minutes someone was fighting. Someone cared. And that meant everything. When humanity fights, the first wave of Zarkith fighters launched from the warships like a swarm of predators. Sarila counted them on the display. 300. Maybe more. Each fighter was twice the size of the human ship. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. They formed a perfect attack formation, a tactic the Zarkith had used to destroy countless civilizations. The small human vessel continued forward without hesitation. It did not try to run. It did not try to hide. It flew straight into the approaching swarm. Sarila felt her chest tighten. This was going to be over in seconds. The humans had made a brave gesture, but bravery meant nothing against such impossible odds. She wanted to look away, but she could not. Someone was dying for her world. The least she could do was witness it. Then the defiant Dawn opened fire, and everything Sarila thought she knew about warfare shattered like broken glass. The human ship erupted with violence. Thousands of projectiles streamed from weapons ports along its hull. They were not energy beams like the civilized races used. They were physical objects, pieces of metal moving at incredible speeds. Sarila had read about kinetic weapons in history books. Ancient species had used them before discovering more elegant solutions. But these were not ancient. These were refined and terrible. The projectiles tore through the Zarkith fighters like they were made of paper. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. Debris scattered in all directions. 20 fighters were destroyed in the first 3 seconds. The Zarkith formation broke apart in confusion. They had expected an easy kill. Instead, they were being slaughtered. The remaining fighters spread out and returned fire. Energy weapons blazed toward the human ship. Many hit. Sarila saw the defiant Dawn's shields flare and collapse. Direct hits struck the hull. Armor plating burned and melted. But the ship kept moving. It kept firing. More Zarkith fighters fell. Then the human vessel launched missiles. These were not like any missiles Sarila had studied. They did not fly in straight lines. They curved and twisted through space like living things. When Zarkith fighters tried to shoot them down, the missiles dodged. When fighters tried to outrun them, the missiles followed. They were hunters with minds of their own. One missile caught a group of 5 fighters clustered together. The explosion was brighter than the sun. Sarila shielded her eyes. When she looked again, those 5 fighters were simply gone. Nuclear weapons, she realized with shock. The humans were using nuclear warheads in space combat. Such weapons had been banned by galactic law for over 1,000,000 years. They were considered barbaric and excessive. The civilized races had evolved beyond such crude destruction. But the humans had not evolved beyond them. Or perhaps they had chosen not to. Perhaps they understood something the civilized races had forgotten. Sometimes survival required terrible choices. The Zarkith warlord's voice roared across all channels. All ships, he commanded. Destroy the human vessel. All of them. Now, I want nothing left but atoms. The massive warships began to move. 1,500 capital ships, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust, turned their weapons toward the single human vessel. This was the end, Sarila thought. No ship could survive what was coming. But then something impossible happened. More signatures appeared on the display. More ships dropping out of hyperspace. 20 of them. All human vessels. All bearing the same battle damage and weapon scars as the first. They had been hiding, Sarila realized. Waiting. The defiant Dawn had not come alone. It had been bait. The human captain's voice broadcast again. This is Captain Maya Chin of the Terran Defense Fleet. Zarkith Collective, you have made a fatal mistake. You thought we were weak because we are few. You thought we were finished because you hurt us. You were wrong. The 21st human ship to arrive was different from the others. It was larger, sleeker, clearly the flagship. Sarila watched as the human fleet formed a defensive sphere around Lithra. 21 ships against 1,500. The odds were still impossible, but they were better than before. And the humans fought like nothing Sarila had ever seen. They did not use formations or elegant tactics. They swarmed like the insects of Earth that Sarila had read about. They covered each other with overlapping fire. When one ship's weapons overheated, another moved to take its place. They used the debris from destroyed Zarkith fighters as cover, hiding behind spinning chunks of metal. They launched nuclear-tipped torpedoes that created temporary dead zones where Zarkith sensors could not penetrate. Then they struck from unexpected angles. It was chaos. It was brutal. It was effective. The Zarkith warships began firing in earnest. The space around Lithra turned into a storm of energy and explosions. Sarila watched human ships take hit after hit. She saw hulls split open. She saw atmosphere venting into space. She saw ships that should have been destroyed continuing to fight with half their systems offline. One human vessel lost all power to its main engines. It used maneuvering thrusters to spin in place, firing in all directions until a Zarkith cruiser finally tore it apart. The crew never stopped shooting. They fought until the very end. But the Zarkith were falling too. The humans targeted weak points with precision that seemed impossible. They hit power junctions and shield generators and weapon systems. They knew exactly where to strike. Sarila realized they had been studying the Zarkith for years. Every battle the Zarkith had won, every world they had conquered, the humans had been watching, learning, preparing for this moment. A Zarkith battlecruiser exploded, its reactor breached by a sustained missile barrage. Then another fell. And another. The impossible was happening. 21 human ships were holding their own against 1,500 Zarkith warships. On the ground, Litherans poured into the streets. They had been hiding in their homes, waiting to die. Now they stood in the open and watched the battle in the sky above. Some were crying. Some were cheering. Some simply stood in stunned silence. Sarila's communicator buzzed. It was her father. "Are you seeing this?" he asked. His voice was shaking. "Are you seeing what they are doing for us?" Sarila could not answer. Her throat was too tight with emotion. The humans were not just fighting. They were dying. She had watched 3 ships destroyed already. How many people had been on those ships? How many families would never see their loved ones again? And they were doing it for strangers. For a species they had never met. The battle raged for 6 hours. It felt like 6 years. The Zarkith committed more and more ships. They were enraged now. Their pride was wounded. How dare these weak humans resist them? How dare they fight back? The Zarkith had conquered 1,000 worlds. They would not be stopped by a handful of primitive vessels from the edge of nowhere. But the humans would not break. Every time a human ship fell, the others fought harder. They screamed challenges over open channels. They taunted the Zarkith warlord by name. They sang battle songs in their Earth languages. Sarila did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Defiance, courage, refusal to surrender. Captain Maya Chen's flagship took a direct hit from a Zarkith dreadnought. The entire front section was destroyed. Life support failed. Half the crew died instantly. But Chen's voice came through again, hoarse but unbroken. "Still here," she said. "Still fighting. Anyone else want to try?" The remaining human ships rallied around the flagship. They formed a protective wall with their own hulls. They took hits meant for their commander. They gave everything they had. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The Zarkith were not used to enemies who fought back this hard. They were not prepared for the level of sacrifice the humans showed. Their formations began to falter. Ships started breaking away. The warlord screamed orders, but his fleet was fragmenting. Fear had entered their hearts. These humans were not normal. These humans were something else. Something dangerous. Something that would not stop until every last one of them was dead or the enemy was destroyed. The Zarkith had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had never faced anyone like this. A massive explosion lit up the sky. The Zarkith command ship, the warlord's personal dreadnought, erupted from the inside. A human torpedo had breached its shields and detonated in the reactor core. The largest vessel in the Zarkith fleet broke apart in a blaze of light. The warlord's final scream echoed across all channels before cutting off forever. Silence fell for just a moment. Then the remaining Zarkith ships began to retreat. They had lost their leader. They had lost hundreds of vessels. They had lost their nerve. The unconquerable Zarkith collective was running away. The human fleet did not pursue. They were too damaged, too exhausted. Sarila watched the Zarkith ships jump to hyperspace one by one until the sky was clear again. Only debris remained. Debris in the battered human vessels. 17 human ships survived. 4 had been destroyed completely. Hundreds of human lives lost. But Lithra was safe. The Zarkith were gone. The impossible had happened. Captain Chen's voice came through one more time. "Lithra, this is Captain Maya Chen. The immediate threat is over. We are going to need medical assistance and repair crews. But you are safe. Your world is safe. That is all that matters." Sarila stood in the assembly hall and cried. She cried for the humans who had died. She cried for her world that had been saved. She cried because she had witnessed something she never thought possible. Courage that transcended self-interest. Sacrifice for strangers. Hope in the face of hopelessness. The first human shuttle landed in the central plaza an hour later. Thousands of Litherans had gathered to meet it. The shuttle doors opened and a human woman stepped out. She was tall for her species, with dark skin and eyes that had seen too much war. Her uniform was scorched and torn. A medical bandage covered one side of her face. She walked with a slight limp, but she stood straight and proud. This was Captain Maya Chin. Behind her, more human soldiers emerged. They all looked exhausted. They all looked wounded. But they were alive and they were smiling. Elder Vethiz approached the captain. His 6 fingers trembled as he reached out in the traditional Lutheran greeting. "Why?" he asked. His voice broke. "Why did you come? Why did you risk everything for us? We are nothing to you. We cannot repay this debt." Captain Chin took his hand gently. Her smile was sad but genuine. "Because someone has to," she said. "The galaxy is full of predators. Someone has to stand up to them. We know what it is like to be prey. We know what it is like to face extinction alone. We survived that. We rebuilt. And we made a promise. Never again. Not to us. Not to anyone else if we can help it." Sarila pushed through the crowd. She had to meet this woman. She had to say something, anything. Captain Chin saw her approaching and waited. Sarila stopped in front of the human captain. She tried to find words but everything seemed inadequate. "Thank you" felt too small. "You saved us," stated the obvious. Instead, she asked the question burning in her heart. "How many?" she said. "How many of your people died today for us?" Chen's expression grew solemn. 47 crew members," she said. "Each one a volunteer. Each one knew the risks. Each one chose to come anyway." She paused. "They believed in something bigger than themselves. I hope that belief was not wasted." Sarila felt tears running down her face again. "It was not wasted," she said. "I will remember them. All of us will remember them. Every Lutheran alive will tell their children about this day. About the humans who came when no one else would. About the warriors who fought when everyone else turned away." Captain Chin nodded slowly. "Then their sacrifice meant something," she said. "That is all any soldier can ask for." The human captain looked up at the sky. "The Zarkith will come back eventually," she said. "They always do. But we will help you prepare. We will teach you to defend yourselves. And if they return, we will stand with you again. You are not alone anymore." That night, Sarila returned to the assembly hall one final time. She stood on the platform where everything had changed that morning. The recording system was still active. Her interrupted speech was still saved in memory. She could finish it now if she wanted. She could talk about art and music and beauty. But those words belonged to a different person. A younger, more innocent version of herself who had not yet learned the hardest truth about the universe. Beauty and art matter, but they cannot exist without someone willing to protect them. Hope is precious, but it requires courage to sustain. She started a new recording instead. She spoke about what she had witnessed. She spoke about the humans who came when no one else would. She spoke about sacrifice and courage and the choice to fight for others. She spoke for an hour without stopping. When she finished, she saved the recording and sent it out across the galactic network. She wanted everyone to know what happened here. She wanted the galaxy to understand that humanity was not weak. Not anymore. Maybe they never had been. Maybe everyone else had just been too blind to see their strength. The message spread across thousands of worlds in the following days. Reactions varied. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Some claimed the story was exaggerated. But others heard it and felt something stir in their hearts. Other small species. Other vulnerable worlds. They had all thought themselves alone and helpless. Now they knew differently. Humanity had shown them a new possibility. Resistance was not futile. Courage was not pointless. And mercy was not weakness. It was the highest form of strength. Sarila stood with Captain Chin a week later on a hill overlooking her city. The human fleet was preparing to depart. Repairs were complete as much as they could be. The humans needed to return to their space, to their families, to their own worlds. But before they left, Chin had one more thing to share. "We were almost extinct once," she said quietly. 20 years ago. The Zarkith nearly finished us. We lost half our worlds. Billions dead. We barely survived." Sarila looked at the captain in shock. "I did not know," she said. "No one talks about it," Chin replied. "The galaxy did not care. We were too small to matter. But we remembered that feeling. That abandonment. That despair. We decided that if we survived, we would make sure no one else felt that way. Not if we could help it." The human ships lifted off one by one. They climbed into the sky and vanished into the stars. Sarila watched them go. She knew she would never see most of them again. But she would never forget them either. None of her people would. The day a single human ship appeared over their world would be remembered forever. The day the galaxy learned that humanity had not been destroyed by the Zarkith. They had been forged by them. Tempered by fire. Made stronger by their pain. And they had chosen to use that strength to protect others. Sarila returned to the academy the next day. Cultural Exchange Day would happen again next year. When it did, she already knew what she would speak about. She would tell the story of the humans. Not because they were powerful. Not because they were advanced. But because they proved that the galaxy could be better than it was. That someone would stand up to the predators. That hope was not a foolish dream. It was a choice. And humanity had made that choice. They had come through the clouds when everyone else turned away. They had fought when fighting seemed impossible. They had saved a world that could give them nothing in return. That was who they were. That was what they had become. And Sarila would make sure the galaxy never forgot it.